So now we have the option buttons in place, so it gives us the three choices. We have our OK cancel, they've been sat there for a while. We now have to add the code behind the OK button that will determine which of these has been selected, and therefore change the highlighted cells on the Excel file. So if we make use of user form stage 3 working file, you'll find it's already at this stage, which has the user form set up and the objects in place, the OK, the cancel, the three choices. To access the OK code, we double click, which takes us into what it currently does, which is a you clicked OK. So we'll comment that out. Now the first stage we need to do is to actually pick up the cells that are highlighted. So we need to declare a variable to hold those. So let's do dim z as range. So that will be the range that is selected. Now, because we're using a case change, we can't really change the case of formula cells. So we're going to firstly make sure that the range we're working with will only affect those cells that actually contain text within them. So we have to set our Z. So our little object Z is now going to hold the cells that are selected. So that's selection. However, there's a special property within here called special cells that allows us to only pick up cells of a certain type. And we need to give it two constants. Cell type is Excel cell type constants. Now you can look this special cells up in the help or online, get the full syntax. But effectively it takes two parameters. One is the type of cell that you want to select, and the second is the value of those cells. In our case, they're both the same. When you want cells that contain constant values, so not formulas, and the contents must be also constants, i.e. not formulas. So that little line there, instead of just picking up the whole selected range, picks up the cells within the selected range that meet our requirements. Then we need to run through to find out which of the options has been selected. So let's add a little comment. If uppercase. So we're going to run an if statement that checks whether the uppercase option has been selected. So we need the name of our object, which is if opt upper. Then we're actually checking if it's true or not, because it can only have a true or a false value, either it's selected or not. And as we've seen earlier, if we're checking for a Boolean value, we don't need to actually say if opt upper is true. We can drop the is true on the assumption, if you say if opt upper, is that you're checking for a true value. So if opt upper is true, then we'll add our end if now before we forget. So within our if statement, we then need to loop through all the values in our selected range and change them into uppercase. For each x in z, and the VBA knows that z is a range because we've declared that up here. Don't forget to put net x, and within there we need to set the value of x, of the given cell at that point in time, is going to be equal to u case, so uppercase, of the current value of x. So if the uppercase button is selected, so if opt upper, because that's the option name, then we're going to loop through every value in z, z being the selected cells that meet our requirements, which is that they are constants. And we're going to change them from their current value to their uppercase value. And we simply repeat that same loop 2 more times, but for each of the different option buttons. So if lowercase, which is opt lower, then we change into L case. And then for title case, we're checking for opt title. And we need to change that to, well, the tricky bit comes is that VBA doesn't contain a title case formula. However, Excel does. And we've seen previously that we can make use of Excel's functions, if we ever require them, by calling on the application object dot worksheet functions dot, and then whichever worksheet function we're after. Well, there's a nice little worksheet function called proper, which does the title case for us. So that's a slightly longer command, but it's because we're having to access the Excel function as opposed to the VBA function. And then we come out of the ifs and we close the form. So we're leaving the close form in place because we do want to close the form itself. So if we were to run this now, we could choose any of the cases and we have a variable not defined. Because we've gone with option explicit, all of the variables we use must be predefined. So I've been a naughty boy there, slap my hands. The start here of our routine, we need to make sure we declare X. Now X is actually a cell within our range, so I'm going to declare it as an object because it's a part of the range. Let's reset that and run our form again. Title case, OK, and then it falls over because no cells were found. So let's go end. Just to make sure it works, we'll be looking at how we check that there are actually cells selected. We'll add a few cells with some text in. And you'll see I've put them all in lowercase. Let's highlight those. Back to the Visual Basic and run our form. Let's choose uppercase. OK. This time there was no error. Form's closed, and back in Excel you can see they've all changed to uppercase. So we know the code works behind this OK button. What we need to do is, before we actually allow the calling of this function, we need to make sure that the cells have been selected. So that's our next stage. This section has been looking at how we effectively make the form do some work. So behind the OK button, we've added the code. It finds out which of your options you've selected simply by finding out if the value is true for the selection. It can only be true for one of these because they are effectively radio buttons, option buttons. So only one of them can be true. And then we loop through the selected files, making the changes we've set out. So we either change them all to uppercase, all to lowercase, or all to title case, here using an Excel function as opposed to a VBA function. So that's taking your form and making it physically work for you.